Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your co-host, M2 Dave. Of course, as always, I'm here with my other two co-hosts, MK and Tom Brady, and MK Rio.
Welcome, everybody. It's episode 55. It's great to see you and Tom again. So, apparently, we got some new news for Mortal Kombat, and I didn't really know this because I haven't been following too much, but they released a new patch. This is what someone told me in my stream just now, like 20 minutes ago. There's a new patch out for MK1 that changes the game.
Well, as somebody who still plays the game, I don't think it was a patch that people expected in terms of the consequences, the just like the 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 largeness of the patch, right? So it did do something. People are not sure just what exactly in terms of the consequences. We'll have to wait and see. Uh, but yeah, the usual stuff. It nerfed a couple of top tiers. It buffed some of the low tier characters. As far as what it means to the game, I really don't know. I think it's kind of small, and I wish more had been done. Um, to me personally, I have a kind of a especially with NRS games nowadays, I have a problem with the patches because I think they do too little sometimes. Some of the stuff should have been done like 6 months ago. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know if it's because the NRS developers are working on the new project, so they have less time to focus on Mortal Kombat One, or even well, not NRS per se, but even the whole fiasco with the Legacy Collection. Um, so I think we'll have to wait and see what it actually does in terms of the meta. But I don't think it's gonna bring anybody back who dislikes the game, or who hasn't played in a long time anyway. I think it's more like for the small audience who still enjoys the game. It's kind of something for them to mess around with. But I don't see the patch as very consequential in terms of oh my god, like meta altering. It's kind of small, uh, and we kind of have to wait and see if it becomes anything bigger than what it is,
Well, that's
which I
very
doubt.
disappointing. You told me because I didn't know anything about it, and that's sad because I actually did say if they ever release a patch, I would download the game again and try it. But now that I'm hearing this, that it's not even a good patch and didn't change much, maybe I have to reconsider getting back to the game, which I was going to do in January. If it's that bad.
Well, I think good or not is in the eyes of the beholder, right? But I don't think it's not very consequential in the sense of I don't know, a mid tier character all of a sudden becomes top tier. Even though some people are saying
Yeah,
that
you're
about
saying like
Raiden, I don't know.
they did slight adjustments, but anyway, I guess for me
Yeah,
it'd be
yeah, yeah.
different because I haven't played the game since first 2 months. I guess when I do play it next month, it will feel like a new game to me anyway. So I guess I might as well try it.
Well, again, I don't want to get to the details because it's kind of brand new and nobody knows, right? But like Raiden, who was remember you guys remember, right?
Yeah, well, I just
Even
remember when I was playing the game first 2 months, every match was like Raiden, Melina, Tanya, etc., and it was just so it's
well,
gonna be
Tanya got
interesting how the
buffed.
game is.
Yeah. Well, Tanya got buffed. I don't know if how big her buffs are, but Raiden is apparently is a lot better now. I have to see it to believe it personally, and I'm not really buying it right now, but apparently he's got some interesting buffs. Because if you guys are even you guys who haven't played the game for a very long time, you remember like the Shaka meta, right? Where he used to, when he should
I
like low poke
remember hearing the
Shaka.
mom playing Raiden in Combat League all the time, and it was
Yeah,
really
yeah,
annoying.
yeah. And kind of once they took that away from Raiden, like he like literally fell down like 3, 4 tiers, kind of like Tanya. But apparently the new in the in this patch, like they kind of buffed some stuff that made him a lot better. Again, I played the game a lot, and I still have to see it to believe this stuff. But again, we'll
Sure.
see. But again, to sum it up, I don't think it's this meta-altering patch.
Well, I was going to
That
ask you guys for the first question or topic, I guess. What is the state of MK currently? Like, are we in a good spot? Are we in a terrible spot? It seems like we're kind of shifting towards the latter. Tom, what do you think?
Mortal Kombat has gone back to 2002. And what I say is that in 2002, the community was probably as divided as it is now, meaning that I don't really think there are many around from that day. So something happened when MK4 came out, where you had the people that played 1, 2, and 3, and they dabbled with 4, but they were like, it's kind of janky. I don't really know. And then the Chicago area stayed on WaveNet. They didn't really migrate to 4. Even those that tested it were like, it's janky. We'll go back. We're staying on WaveNet, UMK3. So 4 kind of developed its own community. So 2 to 3 had somewhat of a split, not as bad as 3 to 4. But from 2 to 3 to 4 was like drastic. It was a whole rebuild of a new community. MK4 kind of had its own community. And then 4 lasted a couple of years in the arcade, and then it was done. And there was no like MK competitive scene. And then MK Deadly Alliance came out, and it was like it's released to a community of nobody. There really isn't like a community. You have people that played 4, people that played 3 and 2, but it's like 2. Some of them like 3. No one from 3 really liked 4. No one from 2, 3, and 4 really went to DA. You know what I mean? So it was really weird, and I feel like that's kind of where we are now. Like you have 1, some people went back to 11. We have MKX now, and I think it's very telling that MKX is what Tampa Never Sleeps chose to feature for this season, and not MK1, especially after a new patch. Um, and then we have people that play MK9, like Aquaman does stuff in the Coliseum. You have Soup, and like every once in a while, I'll put on Deadly Alliance for whatever. We have people playing Legacy Collection. So the scene is like split in 10 different directions. And I think it's probably as divided now as it's ever been. It's very similar to that time, to where now we just have way too many sub communities, and we don't really have that one game that people could get behind. Deadly Alliance wasn't a game the community can get behind, because the newer community this is pre-Deception. So you hadn't developed the online community that you guys had then. So you had a lot of new Mortal Kombat players who didn't really understand competitive gaming. The arcade generation people, most of them didn't get into it. So you had like a lot of the 3D community people that played Tekken and Soul Calibur that got into it. So you had that community in DA. You had 4 having its own community. 3 had its own. 2 had its own. And they were all split 10 different ways. And there wasn't a game to really build off of. It wasn't really until Deception, about 2 months in which people started to develop like competitive rules and clans and everything, that the community started to build, because they finally had a game that everyone that was there could universally get behind and build off of. I feel like we're kind of at that period right now. We just don't have that one game to build off of.
And to follow up what Tom was saying, because I think he's 100% right. Top Sierra Games, which is mostly a Latin American, channel for their NRS community, also just, believe it or not, hosted a Mortal Kombat 11 tournament in the offline, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I could be though. They hosted an MK11 tournament. And then I didn't even know this. There's a channel called Shirai Ryu TV. They're hosting twice a month an Injustice 2 tournament, believe it or not, guys. Like, so it's like all over the place. And like Tom just said, TNS decided not to bring back MK1. They're now hosting MKX next week as a tournament. So, and then obviously, like Tom again was saying, Aquaman's doing stuff with MK9, but then you have the Demon Lobbies of the world and Rips Arena. They're still like clinging to MK1. So like, I mean, it's all over the place. I would argue that's probably a good thing, because at least people are playing something rather than nothing. So my message is, look, we already know what these games are and what they're not. I think their flaws and their flaws are well documented at this point. Like, we don't need to rant about MK11 anymore. We already know what's wrong with it, and we already know why people like it. Same thing with MKX, same thing with MK1, same thing with MK9. Ultimate, whatever. My message to the community is just play what you like and have fun.
Well, that's the problem, and I want Rio to weigh in on this, because Rio's played a lot of them on different formats. The problem with Mortal Kombat is you can't really play all of them, because a lot of them are not really accessible. So, for example,
Only
the reason why
are playable.
Yeah, the reason why Legacy Collection being a bust was such a problem is because the modern player doesn't want to deal with emulators. They don't want to download an emulator. Where do I put the ROM? Where do I put this? What folder is this? They don't want to do that for the 2D, the 3D MK games. They don't want to get Dolphin or S Arcade. What they want to do is download it on Steam and hit play. Download it to their console and hit play. That's it. So that's why Fightcade was really limited, because most people don't want to go through all that stuff. Legacy Collection would have been great because it gives people the ability to get in lobbies. If there was a ranked, they could have played on ranked, they could have played crossplay with what we were hoping was good netcode, which we know it's not now. And just hit play and whatever. And it gave, people tried. Foxy tried, Sikander tried, and they got on it and they said, this is horrible. And they left. So the modern player tried to get into it, but it was, especially day one, it was just so off-putting they never came back. And that's what happens. People never do. So the classics are not really accessible to the modern player as far as just easy to play, just plug in, hit play, and go on. The 3D games are, you got to download this emulator and the memory card. Where do you put the ISO in? And blah. No one wants to do that. MK9, the netcode is abysmal. You can't even buy it anymore. You got to get it on like eBay. And the netcode is abysmal. It's not very good to play. And so then we start with MKX. So really the only 3 NRS games, Mortal Kombat games that are accessible are X, 11, and 1. So people really can't play whatever game they want, because NRS, the Mortal Kombat games, are not very accessible. And Rio would know this because he's played pretty much all of them
I
on
would
all
argue
formats.
MKX is also in the same boat. It's not very accessible to play properly. It's the same problem as Legacy Collection, because the problem with MKX is when I tried to play it a few weeks ago, I was like, you know what, let me actually start learning MKX. Ran into the problem, the ranked is so garbage and trash, it might as well not even exist. There's no rank system. This first one to random
game,
people.
First one.
So what you have to do, this is how you play MKX. You want to get good at the game. You have to hop on, go to rooms, hope there's someone good there, and hope that the good person with 10,000 wins and 1,000 losses even wants to waste time playing you. Otherwise, no games for you can't play. So it's the same shit as Legacy Collection, where because there's
also region locked.
There's no good combat league, so there's no way for you to train and practice good at the game on your own time when you can play. So basically, the only games available that you can play to get good at on your own time are only MK11 and MK1, because they're the only games with a functioning rank system. Every other MK game fails in that. That's why we can't play
You're
them,
right.
or they don't have online
MKX,
like MK9.
Yeah, MKX is region locked. There's no crossplay, and ranked is first to 1. MK11 has an actual ranked, and there's crossplay, and it's not region locked. Same with MK1. So really, when you look at that, then we basically have 2 games.
Yeah, and by the way, when I played MKX for a few hours, this was like a month ago, I went into rooms, and basically everybody was already playing each other, so you have to wait for one of them to finish, which sometimes can take a while, and sometimes they don't even want to play you, because they look at your stats, they're like, I'm not going to play you, I have like 20k wins and 1k losses, like, get on my level first before I accept your challenge. So, yeah, that game isn't the, yo, let's all play MKX, easy to grind and play. It's not. The same issue as Legacy Collection. There's no functioning rank. It's bad.
No, absolutely. But honestly, again, there's really nothing we can do about it at this point. I mean, that's why I said earlier, these games, those games are what they are, right? Like, and they're not going to get patched. They're not going to get changed. I guess there's a slight chance that Legacy Collection may get something, but even the individual who's in charge of the project said essentially, probably not. He kind of insinuated there are probably not enough resources to.
It's so bad that even the physical copy of the game, the Switch 2 version, didn't have MK4 on it, so it's DLC digital. So they sold you one version of the game has got it's a physical copy that doesn't have all the games on the physical copy. You still have to download it. Like it's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, that's inexcusable. So apparently the physical copy's already out for Legacy Collection, but somebody in my stream said earlier that people have been waiting a week or 2 to get them because they haven't fully been shipped out. But there's supposed to be this big player spike, and I've been looking at the numbers, and it looks like it's barely budged. So I guess a lot of people did not end up buying it and going through with it, or they haven't gotten their copies yet in the mail. But the reason why Legacy was supposed to be, I guess, kind of fill in the void for MK in the meantime till whatever happens next for the series, is because a lot of us actually do want to play some of these 2D MK games. The problem is, it's annoying, like Tom said, to download this, get this ROM, get Fightcade, and then when you do get Fightcade set up, there's just not many players. Everybody's from like a different country, so have fun playing all these crazy pings. And then because it's not accessible to play and get into easily, with where you just like plug in the game, put in the disc, and press play to search ranked, you have to like repeatedly challenge people, cherry pick the rank. The way that they do ranked on Fightcade is just very annoying. It's not like if you're used to playing like a Combat League or like a Street Fighter 6 ranked or Tekken 8 ranked, you're not going to feel it. It's just going to feel tedious and annoying. And then on top of that, MK has an issue on Fightcade where in the MK games, unlike Third Strike and the other games people play, people, if they want to, they can basically soft lock you on the coin diagnostic screen if they want to put you in jail for like, if they don't like a certain way you're playing or using jabs too much, they'll do that to you. And be like, now you have to, we're both going to sit here and not play till you leave and I'll get the rank point. It's just a mess. So Legacy Collection was supposed to free us from that prison, give us an actual modernized older MK games in a state where we can actually play them, grind ranked, do that. But then Legacy couldn't deliver. The release was a complete disaster. I think the worst any of us have ever seen for any game. Like, it's barely playable on console because it's extreme input delay. And then on PC, for the longest time, it had similar issues, not with the input delay, but with the games crashing and if your username's too long, like all these issues and desyncs. But they never gave us a rank. So until that day comes where we get a ranked, Legacy Collection is just not, it's like the MKX issue. Like, yes, the online is playable. However, it's just annoying if you're not in rooms 24/7 looking for people to play. It's just tedious. So I'm giving Legacy Collection till January. If they don't do like a ranked or announce something, then I'm gonna move on. The problem is I don't know what to play after January.
Well, the netcode
My only
is
two
kind of
options
weird.
are this MK11 and MK1. That's so I guess I have to go to one of those games in January because that's what I'm gonna be streaming and playing.
Yeah, the netcode is also weird because like Fate streamed him playing someone in Ireland, and he's in Australia, I believe, or New Zealand or whatever. And when he was playing his friend on Fightcade, the connection was flawless. Then he immediately put on. They both played on the Steam version of Legacy Collections, exact same game, and it was unplayable. And the netcode is just not very good overall. Like,
It's
long
awful.
distances.
And by the way, Legacy Collection is the inferior product, even though it costs $50. Fightcade is at least free. $50.
free.
And by the way, I heard this is huge bug in Legacy Collection that I don't think the devs know about, where you get like these input drops so they don't register properly. So whether you're playing
Yeah, I
training online
noticed
with
that.
people, you'll drop some inputs, and it's like, why didn't my move come out? Why didn't this come out? It's a huge issue with the game, and that is still in the game. So it's another reason. And Legacy Collection is just a mess, man. Like, they have to fix
noticed that when
They
I
have to
was
make the
learning
online
slow
better, and
jab.
they have to add a ranked. It's just a mess.
I noticed when I was doing like slow jab, and I'm like, well, if I do it too fast, I should get pushed out, and if I did it too slow, they should be able to duck. But it just stops jabbing, even though I'm not hitting the button. Sometimes it'll just drop, and I'm
It's
like,
just
why
a
does
weird
this
glitch
happen?
with the game where sometimes one of your inputs won't register properly, and that's why you won't get it. Legacy Collection I can't believe I was so hyped for it to know that it was like, imagine we knew that it was going to come out like this. I don't think any of us would even cared or bothered.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
to go
yeah.
back to Rio's point, honestly, like, you guys know I'm almost a middle-aged man, and I go to Test Your Might still, which is a very small website. I don't even hear anybody talk about Legacy Collection. I think it's that. I think the conversation is completely dead. In my quote-unquote inner online circle, in my quote-unquote offline circle, nobody's talking about it. Like, I'm going to Test Your Might. People obviously discussing the balance patch for Mortal Kombat 1. There's Warner Brothers buying. Netflix buying Warner Brothers. There's Mortal Kombat 1 not being at EVO anymore. There's like judges.
Wait a
and
minute, we got to
interesting,
talk about that. Why is MK1 not at Evo? What happened with that? That's crazy.
Well, I think that the games that are included they're newer. They have more of a following. I think that's really about it. I think that the games are newer. They have a bigger
Oh,
following.
so they're only featuring the newest games at Evo.
No,
Well,
it's got vampire saviors and
Then how the hell is Vampire Savers over MK1? That's do people just not like MK1? Like, what happened exactly? Because I haven't been following MK1 after I didn't like it the first 2 months. So I kind of moved on. So what happened? Like, what's the state with MK1? Do people like the game? Do they not? Is it considered good? Is it bad? Like,
Well, I can comment on that since I still play the game and I follow the scene very, very closely. I think offline the game is definitely dead, with some minor exceptions. But online, I think the game has been very stable. Like there's almost no question about. And I can give you 10 different examples.
I disagree. I have the numbers, by the way, but good.
Okay,
I don't want
I
to cut
have
you
the
off.
numbers myself. Okay, so Warner Play, which is a channel that has millions of views, hosts the game, and the game gets very good. This is all YouTube speaking. I don't know Twitch because I usually don't watch Twitch. Um, there's stuff like uh, Viana Max or Max Viana. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the gentleman's name. He's
Mhm.
Brazilian. He's got close to 1 million views. He also hosts the game online and offline, and he gets very good numbers. And there's like your smaller channels, like obviously your honeybees, your demon lobbies. You know, Rips Arena is big for their NR scene, but it's not that big outside of the NRS scene, right? I think
Mhm.
that's fair to say to him as well. And there's a couple of other ones as well. I think the game is doing very well online. People are playing it to this day. I have no problem finding a match at Combat League. Just like I said the same thing. So it's not like me disliking or liking the meta. It's just like me speaking, anecdotally and in terms of my observations. And because I said the same thing about MK11 right over the summer. So does it compare well to Street Fighter and Tekken? Of course not. I think those comparisons are very silly. Nobody's making those comparisons. So I think that's kind of where the game is standing in terms of its current status.
What I don't get is this. I remember during MK9, I know that was like 15 years ago, but during MK9, when the MK scene was first becoming its own thing, I guess offline and becoming big, our tournaments back then weren't that big. We used to have like 100 people to 300 at tournaments every month. That was it, 100 to 300 people. So thinking back then, I was like, wow, into the future, like 10 years, 5 years, there's the tournaments gonna be even bigger. Like every tournament, we're gonna have like 500 people at them, 1,000, and so on. So to look into now today's time, where we're basically almost 15 years from when MK9 launched, how are the numbers in any way even similar to MK9 offline, where it's like just get 100 to 300 people offline tournament? Like that to me, like how did this happen? How did we
I can
almost
tell you exactly how it
regress
happens.
15 years ago? Like how?
I can tell you how it happens. For a couple things. For one, Dave made two different points there. When he's talking about offline is dead, he means offline attendance, and he agrees, like, offline wise, it's no surprise when you get, just to clarify for the audience, um, it's no surprise to see a small MK1 turnout to where it's like not even worth holding those tournaments anymore. That's obviously what he's talking about. But online, saying obviously it's a little healthier. But instead of pointing to entrance, he's pointing to views on YouTube. I think the participation of the game, which Rio was referencing, is absolutely abysmal. I did the numbers for the Coliseum. The last Coliseum was held before EVO. So people are still training for EVO. They're still training for possibly the Last Chance qualifier and Final Combat. Coliseum averaged over those 8 weeks 120.75 entrants, which isn't bad. However, if you held it now, after EVO, after Final Combat, after Last Chance Qualifier, after no EVO announcement, and with the morale so low, I would at least guess you would probably lose maybe 25 people. So I don't think MK1 is even capable of averaging 100 entrants. Maybe it could average between 80 and 90, which I guess is decent. But for a game that's a AAA game as big as Mortal Kombat, to average anime numbers is, is disgraceful. And for one, I think a lot of this goes back to MK11 in reality. I heard Harada step down from Tekken, and when he was going over his great career, when he brought up Tekken 4, he said, Tekken 4 sold well. It sold 4 million. Which for that time was amazing. 2002, 2001, I believe. Amazing numbers. 4 million. He said, but even though the sales were good, the feedback was not good. So he could have looked at the
I
sales
didn't like
numbers
Tekken
and
4 at all. I like Tekken Tag 1, Tekken 5 over Tekken 4.
yes. So, but it sold well. But he said I could look at the sales numbers and basically say, fuck you, money talks. It's selling, people like it. Or I can look at their sales numbers and say the sales say people like it, but the feedback says they hate it. Ed Boon, one of the biggest idiots in the history of interpreting data, is told, look at how well MK11 sold, and he doesn't focus on the feedback. I think what happened was MK began to grow. Like, the NRS scene started. You had MK9, then you had MKX, and people were not as happy with some of the gimmicky mechanics in MKX, especially the variation system. Some didn't like all the armor, but the game was just so offensive. Armor became a defensive mechanic, um, and it was one of the main defensive mechanics in the game, meant to balance out the risk reward system. But and then MK11 came out, and they really doubled down on this gimmick mechanic. And the funny thing about MK11, if you think about it, they could have when the game was launched, we did a podcast because they originally advertised it was going to be a custom variation game, and we did a podcast. One of our earliest pre MK11 launch podcasts was on not just how they changed the execution, how they were going to make the game more execution heavy, and then they changed it, but it was on how they were saying up until maybe a month before launch it was going to be a custom variation system. Then at the last second they said, well, it's not ready, so we're going to release it with 2 variations. But the reality is, the way they released the custom variation system in the last patch, it never changed from day one. They could have released it and unlocked it the exact same way, and it would have been the same way on the first day as the last day. Of course, they tweaked some of the characters, so obviously there would have been some differences, like the sand trap was tweaked, Garrus's for 212, all that stuff. Other characters got changed. My point is, though, they literally just unlocked what it would have been day one on the final day. So they basically fully released something that they admitted was never ready to be finished. I think what happened was the game came out, it started selling well. COVID did help that a little bit, but they never paid attention to their feedback. Like, after 1 year, the most successful Mortal Kombat in history, from not just sales but attendance, it broke all sales records. It's the fastest selling game in 1 year of any fighting game ever. It also had almost 1,600 people at EVO. It had like 90% of Street Fighter and Tekken's crowd. So MK was right up there with Street Fighter and Tekken's numbers, which is a huge accomplishment. It's a credit to how the scene is growing. And then a few months later, they said, after the biggest Mortal Kombat tournament of all time and great sales numbers, you're never coming back to offline tournaments again. MK11 out of EVO circuit, out of all EVO tournaments, Road to EVO tournaments, gone. It would have not been at any tournaments at all in 2011. Then COVID hits, and then of course the online movement set. When
Wait,
COVID
one second.
is done,
You have to ask yourself: was it that people wanted to play MK11, or was it that MKX is the reason MK11 was so popular? That people just wanted to play MKX and they were bringing it into MK11?
it was popular because people were tired of Injustice 2 and they wanted to go back to Mortal Kombat. And, I think NRS did have some goodwill from 9 and a little bit from X, even though we all highlight X's problems constantly. But the feedback was people were tired of the gimmick mechanic. The variation 3s were not implemented all the best. And people were kind of tired of it and they were getting bored of it. So even though the EVOs leading up to EVO, the tournament numbers were amazingly solid, over 700 people at the first combo breaker, over 1,500 people at the first EVO. MK is just shattering records for its own tournament attendance and shattering sales. Toward the end of that year, it kind of went off a cliff and the numbers started to nosedive down. And the feedback started to be like, we don't like the direction this game is going. And then COVID happened, and they, it kind of, obviously EVO Online happened. They held every game because it's online. You don't have to worry about venue or staff. And it did something where, then they released the expansion. Then they released, whatever it was after the final version of the game, a complete edition, whatever it was called. And when the FGC kind of did its renaissance, we're coming back, the offline movement is coming back, COVID's over. EVO put MK11 there, and I agree it should have been there, give every scene a chance to rebuild. But MK just never recovered from year one of MK11. Now, the sales kept going because they were making promises. Hey, we're going to change this, we're going to change that. We're doing something with variation systems, but they're a very gray line about it. And then it releases and it's not what people wanted. I think the feedback of MK11 was, even though it sold well, the feedback was, we don't like these gimmicky systems. We don't like this gimmick system because you did the 3 variations in X. Then instead of keeping the 3 variations and having years of experience and perfecting it, you then did a custom variation system, which you were not even close to perfecting. And then they doubled, instead of taking the feedback that people don't like these gimmicky systems, they could have, and even all the systems in MK11 were gimmicky. They were meant to be good. Like the custom variation system was gimmicky. The breakaway was gimmicky.
It was like
meant to
create
have
a character, but with specials.
Yeah, and the custom the breakaway was kind of gimmicky. So was flawless block, not
Fatal
implemented well.
Blow
Like,
was
oh,
horrendous.
yeah, flawless block was a good in concept, but then when you say, well, I just hit you, now I'm plus 30, and you launched me for me jailing you, that's not okay. So it had a lot of flaws in its systems. And then one comes out, and instead of perfecting things, they double down even more on the variation system and say, now, instead of the custom system that we've learned from our mistakes and we've done it right, now we're going to give you a third version of the variation system where the cameo is like a variation, but instead of it being for one character, where one character could have a dominant variation only they can pick, now the cameo is the variation that everybody can pick. And they just kept these gimmicky systems, never perfecting it, always starting with a new version of that gimmick where they again have to like go through the growing pains, and they never perfect it. And I think people got tired of the gimmicks. The feedback was like, hey, stop with these gimmicky mechanics, stick with at least something. If it's the variation system, then it's the variation system. If it's the custom variation system, then it's the custom variation system. But perfect something rather than just, coming up with something new that's just a version of that's even more experimental. And I think that they just didn't take their feedback into consideration. I understand they've always started from scratch, but the gimmick mechanic, they really, I don't think, paid attention to the feedback, and I think MK's just gone downhill because of it.
I don't understand why NRS is so obsessed with the variation system from MKX, where they have to keep trying to do a version of it in every game they make. What if for the next MK game we just stop doing that and let it die, and do either something else but not making a gimmick? Like, can we just have characters come back where we don't have to pick and choose? Like, oh, do you want this move? Do you want this variation? Do you want this custom? Like, can we just play a character and have interesting designs with depth behind it, and not have all these gimmicks that we have to pick and choose at the character select screen? So I think that would be better. And also, real quick, let me say this. Do you guys remember that first podcast we did for MK11, 2 months before MK11 came out? And they weren't even listening feedback back then for when we were like, when everyone was like, oh, they removed, because originally when they were doing MK11, all the characters' meter burn moves were unique inputs for every character. Like Devore, you had to do something to do her EX spider tentacle move, and then other characters you had to do this input. And we were like, that's cool, keep that, because it adds more to characters, more for you to learn, makes it less easier to character hop and be bored when you play different characters. But what did they do? They changed it. They were like, that's too complicated and hard, because then if you're playing 3 different characters, you have to learn all 3 different meter burn inputs for all these characters. It's like, no. And then ever since then, they just kept going downhill with changes that they kept doing that didn't make sense.
Even their early combat casts were like, here's Cabal, we're going to show you these moves. I know he's got these 30 more moves, but we're not going to show you those because those are custom moves. They're not going to be playable in competitive modes day one. And we were like, what?
Yeah, that was also dumb, because it's like, wait, what are all those other moves? No, we only going to show you these moves.
But then they admitted the game wasn't ready with customs, and they just released customs as it was in a state that they admitted day one wasn't even ready.
Also, when they made the beta and then made some of the characters that had usable stuff in the beta get removed and destroyed for the game launch, like Scarlet, rest in peace. Cabal's crush and blows that made sense if hook swords catch you doing this, but now and then the game comes out, it's like, oh, it doesn't do that anymore. So what's the point of the crush and blow? It just doesn't work. Like, what the... It's just dumb. Remember, Baraka had those 70% combos that were kind of hype? You could cash in crush and blow on all your strings. They got rid of all that, so then Baraka comes out and he's trash. It's like, what was the point of the beta? To make all the characters get nerfed when we try them?
Well, I think the reason we have the variation, and honestly, I'm not going to mention the names, you guys were there. We already know why we had that system. What was the most complained thing about MK9? Ironically, it wasn't even the glitches.
Matchups.
Exactly. So thinking.
But that's just a young community who doesn't understand fighting games have matchups, and that you can never get rid of that.
Everybody complained about matchups. All of us did. Like, there's unless you were a Kabal player, you probably complained about matchups.
Yeah, but
like,
Dave, here's where it's not consistent though. If they go by what feedback, then MKX, I remember a lot of us complaining about variations. We just want like characters with more moves instead of having to pick and choose. They double down from K11, bring back variations to tweak it. Then they triple down, bring it back again for MK1, but then tweak it again. It's like, how about we just get rid of any kind of form of variation from MKX? Like, why can't we do that? They're like so obsessed with that system.
I'll give you the perfect example. If you're a defensive player in Mortal Kombat 1 or Mortal Kombat X, right? MK11 is an exception. You're gonna struggle. Like you're gonna have a really hard time, right? However, if you can't get our zoning, Lil Johnny here, Sub-Zero cameo, press one button. Oh my God, Lil Johnny, you're anti-zoning god, right? Because now you get to ignore every projectile in the game, right? Like, why do you think it was put in the game? It wasn't put in the game to counter rushdown. It was put in the game to counter, zoning, to counter certain defensive options. That's why, because that side won. They won a long time ago, as my friend playing to win, says. So that's why it's in the game. Obviously, MK11 is an exception, but I think that's the reason why in the game.
Right, but don't you think it's lazy design though? Like, imagine in Tekken 8, they're like, "Oh, you don't have a Hell Sweep? Guess what? Just pick it. You can equip your Lily with the Hell Sweep." Or this, it's like that. Just doesn't that make the game just feel lazy and more generic across the board?
Well, I'm not. Fair argument. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you why. I mean, you guys asked the question: why is the variation system? Why is the custom? Custom move system? Why is the camera system in the game? We already know why it's in the game. In fact, the developers told you at events, you guys, this is the game. You know why? I mean, let's not be silly about this. Like, game.
We can't all answer for the rest. Let me say this then. I guess we can answer on what we want to see for the next big MK game, whatever it is. Do you guys want to see another form of variations return? Because in my opinion, I think that needs to be put to rest. Only if they ever do any kind of variation system, then go back to the 3D era, bring back the styles you can switch in game, not a character select. That's it. Aside from that, I don't want to see variations.
I just want to challenge Tom just a little bit, and I promise we're gonna.
Sure.
My problem with the, blame everything on NRS, blame anything on Namco, whoever the company is. It's just that, like, I mean, FIFA 5 and Tekken 8, they're kind of paradoxes, right? Because those games were not well received, yet they still do very well in tournaments. Why? One, they have a history of a competitive scene, and so in fact, in spite of their flaws, those games eventually not only are they selling well. Street Fighter 5 actually sold very well. It was, I think, the most sold Street Fighter game of all time up until maybe Street Fighter 6, which I'm sure at some point will surpass it. And Tekken 8 is still like selling okay, right? So, like, at some point we have to say, like, look, man.
Well, I can tell you why that is too, and it's an uncomfortable truth. For one, Street Fighter will always do well simply because those who make money in the FGC make money because Capcom is the only money maker. In other words, the whole EVO machine is powered by Capcom. It must succeed, or everybody that makes money off the FGC is about to stop making any money and go work at McDonald's. So if you look at the history of the modern FGC, the FGC completely died with the arcade. It was reborn with Marvel 2, not Street Fighter. Street Fighter Third Strike was like, hey, back of the line, right? Back with the cigarette bushes.
Aren't you kind of making the point for me? It's about the people. It's not about the game.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I'm giving some history for the people.
No, I know. I'm not, dude. All your numbers, I'm not doubting them. All your history, I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that you have to understand what it was built on. The FGC, the modern FGC, was built on Marvel 2, but then when Marvel 2 faded, it's called, Dave, the FGC Renaissance in 09. That's why they're called, quote-unquote, 09ers, right? People that came around in 09. And the FGC was reborn on its new king, Street Fighter 4. And Street Fighter 4 kind of took the torch from Marvel 2, and the FGC had new life. It's all built off of that. Everyone who makes money off of holding pro FGC events, it's powered on Street Fighter. If Street Fighter goes, everybody loses a job. The whole machine. So Street Fighter will succeed because it must succeed because way too many people's paychecks depend on it. So people say, well, how come Street Fighter can release a bare bones, blah, 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 like MK1, and it's still because nobody's paycheck relies on MK1. That's why. And then there's Tekken. One thing that Tekken and Street Fighter have in common is something that MK hasn't done. See, Street Fighter, the way the FGC was built, it's these events had their own tournaments. So like if the arcade era, you would have tournaments for the 2D games like Street Fighter, things like that at the arcade, and a whole nother community on a whole different forum where the people aren't even talking to each other cross forums are going to hold an event on that same arcade on a different day for Tekken and Soul Calibur. So you had communities that did their own events. Capcom have organized their own events for Marvel and Third Strike, etc. And Tekken, if they wanted a Tekken tournament, they didn't rely on the Capcom community to do it. If the Capcom community wanted a tournament for Marvel or whatever it is, they didn't rely on the Tekken community to do it. They all became self-sufficient, which is how they were able to build, and they have a culture of their own self-sufficiency, whether it was whatever on Zaibatsu and whatever on SRK, and that culture just continued even into the modern social media era. Then there's MK. When MK was born with the NRS era, it was 100% reliant on every other community to kind of foot it. So if it was not relying on the grace of the FGC to put it in premier spots, it wouldn't be there. And MK has always really been that way. So now that, you know, like again, look at Smash. If Smash wasn't at EVO, they don't give a fuck. They're going to hold their own Smash tournaments. They don't give a shit. Like their community is already built on being self-sufficient. If they stop putting Tekken at EVO, they're still going to hold Tekken events. They'll find a way to work it. MK has never had that. So now what should happen is Mortal Kombat at least try to hold their own tournaments, but they don't. Outside of like Combat NJ, I can't think of a single offline tournament for Tekken. For Mortal Kombat. So really the FGC, the way it's constructed, Mortal Kombat isn't, even though it's one of the big three, quote unquote, it's not constructed to really survive as one of the big three. It's kind of relies on the benevolence of everybody else. And when MK falls out of favor with those communities, it's just not going to come back. It doesn't have a seat at the table. And that's kind of why MK is where it is right now.
No, well said. I agree with you 100%. I just think we need to. I'm all about holding NRS, WB, you know, the lack of legacy, you name it, all the things that honestly we've been talking about for the past, like 15 years. And I don't think anybody will say that we haven't held the games accountable, starting with MK9, MKX, you guys name it, right? You can even say Tom and I went too far with MK11. We've all done it. First year of MK1, you guys heard those discussions. They're still on this channel. Legacy, go back and watch that. But at some point, we also have to say, look, how about the self-sufficiency? And when are we going to start that movement? Like, the kid who now plays Third Strike, maybe 10 years later, didn't start playing Third Strike because, I don't know, he looked at Chun-Li's matchup chart and like, you know what, I don't want to play this game because Chun-Li is going to beat my character 7-3. He played probably because he saw Daigo's Perry video, got encouraged, learned the game for many years, is now still playing. When are we going to have that moment in the MK community? When are we going to embrace our community? Where's our number one leader who's going to, not necessarily one leader, who's going to lead us to the next, go ahead, Rio.
The problem is there's not a game we can all get behind. I mean, here's the thing. Yes, we'd love to have this huge offline NRS tournament, this and that. But the issue is, what is the Mortal Kombat game that's going to get everybody travel to go play? It can't be MK9, because MK9's online is atrocious. Can't be MKX, because the game doesn't have a functioning rank system. It can't be MK11, because I guess people don't like it, or at least a lot of people have issues with it. And it apparently can't be MK1 either because of other problems. So when it comes down to it, we have to first establish what is the Mortal Kombat game that people like enough to everybody to travel to. This is the first issue, because when you look
all
at
of them,
Street
it's got to be by committee. It's got to be all of them by committee. It's
right, but when you look at Street Fighter, here's the problem with MK community, in my opinion, because there's only 2 playable MK games and not everything else. We're very pigeonholed to a certain amount of games that some of us may not enjoy. Whereas if you look at the other communities like Street Fighter, for example, because we were just talking about them, they have Third Strike, rollback netcode, ranked system, even Street Fighter 2 Turbo. You can go as back as Street Fighter 4 has a functioning ranked system. Street Fighter 5, Street Fighter 6. Us, we're just stuck with, oh, you want to get good on a game at your time? Well, you can play MK11 or MK1, that's it. Everything else, you like MK9? Too bad. Game doesn't have good online. You like MKX? Too bad, no working rank system. Oh, you like the 2D MKs? Well, aside from getting soft lock on
No
5K
crossplay.
menu...
Oh, I got it on PC. MKX is still
like,
fucking... Oh, I got it on PC. What do you got it on? Oh, I got it on PlayStation. It's still...
Look, I hate to say this, but I guess if we want to build something, everybody's going to have to kind of either accept MK11 or MK1 and go from there. But I think just people aren't a fan of those two games. I mean, there are people that like them and play them, but it's not as much of the MK community together in that they want to. Like, it's only like... It's like everybody's split in fragments, like Tom said. Like, there's only a fragmented part of the MK community that wants to play MK11, and then another fragmented part that wants to play MK1. There's not like a huge audience behind it that actually wants to play the game.
Anything wrong with that? I mean, all movements start
No, there's
organic.
nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, how many times are we going to keep resetting? Street Fighter, if you like Third Strike 2 decades ago, you can keep playing it. If you like Street Fighter 4 a long time ago, almost 2 decades, you can keep playing it on ranked. The problem is with us, until MK11 came out, that's where we started, basically, with online and everything. Because everything else online is just horrendous.
Well, I'm sure our friend Crimson would make an extreme case, and Rio, you know more about this topic than anybody else. Maybe in the NRS community, it's just like Melee. Didn't it start like very quote unquote poor, right? Like their games that do all these rules to have all these maps. It was a party game, and look what they have accomplished. I know it's an extreme and unlikely example, and it's a community.
Melee's gameplay is so good that it's worth fighting and doing all that for. That's what I'm saying. What is the MK game in our community that's worth fighting for like that?
But Rio, that good in gameplay is highly subjective. That's the problem that I feel
Dave,
like...
you don't understand because you never tried Melee. The Melee has so much stuff in it that'll keep you entertained. You could play any character in Melee, and you'll be stuck in practice mode for the next 3 decades of your life because there's so much to work and practice on.
I'm not denying the depth of the game. I'm sure. I'm just saying, like, a lot of the stuff that even the three of us would discuss in terms of what constitutes good gameplay, we would probably disagree 1 or 3 times. Like, it's a coincidence. Like, there's a reason why Melee accomplished what it did, and there's only one Melee that accomplished what it did, and no other, fighting game has ever essentially done that, right?
That's because it takes both sides. It has to be the game that's very good, that's worth fighting for, and then it has to be the community behind it that supports the game. You need to have both.
It's kind of like a coincidence, right? You have to have the right pieces at the right times at the right place.
Right, but what I'm saying is I feel like we have the community behind MK, like we have a lot of passionate people behind it, but we don't have that one MK game that everybody wants to rally behind to defend. That's the issue. So we have the community, but we don't have the game. So what is the game? Is it MK1? Is it MK11? Is it MKX? Like, which is the game that'll bring everybody together?
Because I think it goes back to what Tom was saying. It's just like there are a lot of people in this community, even when the game is brand new, everybody gets behind. A lot of people have very different views about what constitutes good gameplay, and it's highly subjective, right? What you two consider, and including me, what we consider like good zoning is very, very different from what a modern player considers good zoning, right? What we consider good defense is very different what people consider, what the modern player considers good defense, et cetera, right? I'm not saying their views are wrong. I'm just saying they're very different perspectives, right? And that's part of the problems. So a game gets released. I think it's trash. Rio may think it's okay. Tom thinks, you know what? I'm too old to bother with this garbage. A new modern player likes it. But there are not enough of them to start a new scene because they don't have the experience. They don't have the knowledge of a Tom Brady, of a Jimmy. So what do we go from here? I don't know.
Yeah, but
I think that's
okay. But I feel like the first issue is this: we have the community, we have the players. However, you keep overlooking what is the game that is going to bring everybody together and get everybody travel to the tournament for. What is the Mortal Kombat?
There isn't one single game. It doesn't exist.
Then that is the problem. Then that's what the issue is.
But I just told you what the issue is specifically.
But I mean, what can we just do? Just lay down and die? I mean, it's got to. We do what we can.
Again, the MK community it's big, right? especially when the new games get released. But the problem is a lot of people have very different perspective, right, about what constitutes a good game and what does
Mhm.
not. Uh, Street Fighter and Tekken have a certain legacy, and their games, while they're different from one another, right, they kind of have a similar style, more or less. Ours don't. Our games are as different as Super Turbo and Third Strike, literally almost every game. And by the way, we're
Well, here's
still
the
not even
issue. 3D MK
in
community
just
looks at 2D MK and they're like, "What is that?" 2D MK community looks at
yeah,
UMK3 and they're like, I mean, 2D MK looks at 3D MKs. They're like, "What the hell is that?" And then you have the
and
NRS
we're
scene
not even, yeah,
looking back, going
yeah,
like, "That it looks awful."
and
And then
we, yeah, and we're not even adding injustice to the equation, which is like completely
right.
fucking
Well,
different.
okay. Well, here's the problem then. So instead of us having one big game to bring us together, basically a tournament has to host 30 different MK games, and then hope that all these 30 different sub communities come together and then play their own game there. And it's just at that point, it just seems so complicated. But that may be the only way to do it.
I think it can work, but nobody's gonna sponsor
And
it.
you're gonna have
Yeah,
you're gonna need a huge venue to have all these 30 different MK games with all their different setups and consoles and then sub communities. Like it's gonna be
well,
like
here's my suggestion, and if I may, just real quick, I think if you hosted maybe an Ultimate MK9, whatever, you could throw MK1 because it's the most recent in there, maybe MKX tournament, and then you did it. I know, look, exhibition, Rio against Tom, Tom Brady MK9, and you hyped it up and you did all the stuff. People would watch. People will 100% watch, but there's no money. Nobody's gonna sponsor it because that FGC has no money, right? But if you did that, I assure you, people would watch. There's no question that people would watch matches in MK9, hype exhibition matches, and the modern games you have to have them in the equation, and ultimate shock, what shock play, shock against Detroit Ballin, people would watch, but there's no money to sponsor these events. Tom, am I right or wrong?
No, I mean there's none. MK would have to do it because they love the game. But Rio's point is, well, people do love the game. They just love different ones at the same time. That's kind of the problem.
it's just sad because when you look at other fighting game communities, we have more of the problem of being there's just like imagine there was one MK game where you could see, oh shit, Perfect Legend versus the current best MK11 player here in this new MK game, but then you have Sonic going up against this player from the 3D MKs, and then oh shit, that 2D MK player going up against. We don't have that one MK game that's bringing all these names together. Like when you look at Street Fighter, Dave, when you mention, Daigo, Justin, all these different people, different eras, they're all playing a main big game. That's why you see these matchups happen. But what NRS you don't. It's like it lacks a lot in that.
Justin is actually not playing Street Fighter 6. He's more of a
Okay, but for most of the games, like Street Fighter 5 and so on, he's been there playing, like against the New Good Blood and some of the older play. Like, there's been a lot of those clashes happening.
well.
Whereas
My argument is that the Street Fighter community is so big that they can have an event for Third Strike, as we literally saw a year ago, 2 years ago.
Hmm.
They can have a Marvel event. People will come out. They
Okay,
can have
what if
obviously.
EVO hosted UMK3? Would that be good or bad? Like, how big do you think it would be?
I think it would be incredibly small. The only game that has a chance of succeeding is either MK9 or MK1. Not because those games are great or whatever. Again, forget about the subjectivity of the meta. It has to do with the fact that MK9 is, in the community, go to Jugs' poll, it's not scientific, don't test your mind. MK9 won that poll.
Okay, but there's a difference between people wanting to see MK9 and actually playing it. So if they were to do MK9 at EVO, how many people do you think would show up to play it?
Very, very few. Because
Because you can't play it online. You can't get anybody
Yeah,
into
and
it.
this
That's
is
the
the
problem.
problem. This is
and
yeah.
also we have to be honest with ourselves. The players, the stars of that game, they're old. Guys,
Hmm.
I don't want to discuss the ages, right? To get personal, but like I'm middle aged, Tom's already there, Rio's getting there. Like we're not young anymore. Like we can't travel. Like we're not what we used to be in the sense that we have all this time, all this money. Tom's got kids, Rio's got like job. I'm doing what I'm doing. So like we can't do that. We need younger players to step up and carry the torch, but we can't because the game is not playable. So again, it's like a circle, right?
Well, I mean, I guess it goes back to MK1. What did MK1 do so bad or fail in that a lot of people just already dismiss it and want to go back to older games. Like, what did they do wrong? Because I feel like this is the only thing NRS could learn from going forward is what
What you
not
see
to
with Mortal
repeat.
Kombat. Well, I can tell you right now because the data's there. Outside of this, so the 3D era is kind of really weird because it's the only time that this hasn't happened. But if you go from the beginning of MK, you had MK1, then one game after one, 2 was quite different than 1 in theory, but it was still grabbed a lot of the people who play Mortal Kombat. Then when you go to 3, it was like, all right, now we're running, we're doing dial-up combos, then UMK, now we're doing jump-ins. It was like, it really had a very small percentage of the people that got into 2 that got into 3, and then 4 was way too gone. The modern era is the same thing. You had 9, then X was like, well, it's not 9, but it's fast-paced, and hype, blah, 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 before that all wore off. And then you had 11, and it was like, all right, now we're getting really far. And then there's 1, and it's like, we're not even in the same ballpark. It's MK traditionally, from the arcade era and the NRS era, has started out one way, then the next game, it's like, it's different, but I can get into it. Then the third game is way different. And then the fourth one is like, what world are we in? Outside of the 3D era. Where you had Deception, Deadly Alliance, which wasn't even played by the same community that played Deception. It was played by the Tekken and Soul Calibur community. However, those players started dominating in Deception because it was similar enough to Deadly Alliance that they could build off of it. And of course, they left for Tekken 5. But then at that point, the new Mortal Kombat community was starting to come along. Then Armageddon, it wasn't Deception, but it built off of the Deception system. When they went to MKDC, we saw so many people that you guys told me about that was around in MKAC and all that stuff. They were like, fuck this. We're not doing that. So
yeah, a lot of them like MK vs DC, sadly. But here's the problem with the 3D era, too. Aside from DA, I guess, because DA doesn't have this issue. They were to ever redo the 3D era and be like, yo, we're releasing Armageddon, Deception, rollback netcode. Here's why it's not going to work. Because what made the 3D MKs, I know it's going to sound stupid to say, what made the 3D MKs playable back then on that shit netcode is the way the game worked. Yes, because the online was so bad and you would be catching to your opponent's connection and delay, it allowed you to do moves and stuff that otherwise wouldn't be safe. Like if I were to play Noob offline, what the hell move can I do? Everything I do is death on block. I have no move. But online, if you're playing me online with Noob, whether it be Deception or Armageddon, I have a safe launcher, I have fast pokes I can challenge you with, I have staggers. That all works because of how the online is. You take that away and you bring back a 3D MKs with rollback, it's not the same game anymore. So the people that played it back then and got used to that style wouldn't be able to play anymore. Because I'd be like, what is this? I cannot play. Armageddon Scorpion doesn't work. My 4-to-1 weapon is unsafe now. It's just the character. This is like a different game at this point. So aside from DA, it would just be fucked.
DA is the only one. Let me explain at least to the audience. So to the audience, what you have to understand is the way they made Deception and Armageddon these games run is the netcode, to make it run smoothly, they would remove frames of animation and recovery from offline to online. So for example, a move that would be like minus 30 offline could be +1 online because they remove a massive amount of the recovery frames. So many, like 99% of the moves in Deception are death on block, full combo punishable.
And Armageddon.
But Armageddon. But when you go online, this doesn't happen. A great example is Dairu's Eskrima back 1 in Deception. It's like +1 online. It's no lie, like minus 30
Can't even use
offline.
this shit offline.
Yeah. So, and then there are combos that work online only, but not offline.
And then there's extra tech that works online too. Like, for example, anti-breakers that aren't a thing offline, but online it makes the characters be better. Like Drawman, he would launch you in Armageddon. He goes to back to you, Hungar Reptile. He will eat your breaker. It's like a tech. So you can stop a combo short to eat their breaker and then get more pressure after. Or you can choose to go for a combo and they're scared to break. Like all that stuff, when you make the game offline, online with rollback and all that gets fixed. It makes a lot of the games not work anymore. And a lot of these characters that used to play a certain way and have styles and safe moves, that's all removed. So in a weird way, fixing the game online removes so much depth from it, makes some of these characters unplayable. Like the only two
games, 3D games playable offline are MKDC, which just because we know the minutia of the rights between the DC characters, that will never be re-released. And then Deadly Alliance, which was made to play
Yeah,
offline.
and what's cool with
So
DA is if you've ever played a lot of the online MK, like Dave, for example, Dave played a lot of Deception Armageddon. If they were to play DA, he would feel right at home because it's very similar. DA offline is similar to how Armageddon and stuff played online. You have a lot of safe moves, can make things quicker. Like the meta is similar. So if you played Armageddon Deception back then, PS2 Online, and you understood those games and meta and how to play them online, you would feel right at home at DA because DA is very similar to that, but without the lag and shit is just removed. So DA is honestly the best thing out of the 3Ds if you want to play or use them, because the other games just don't work. You can't host Deception offline Armageddon. The games literally don't even play the same. Like they don't.
yeah, that's true. But the point I was trying to make is that it's really, I consider it the best time of growth because people don't realize MK went downward from MK1 2. So when MK1 to 2 skyrocketed, 2 to 3 went down, 3 to 4 ghost town. And then we have Deadly Alliance, which is, NRS kind of goes through these dinosaur meteor events where everything goes extinct and then everything gets reborn. Then you had Deadly Alliance to Deception to Armageddon, and the scene was growing, and then it kind of done. And then it kind of restarts with MK9. And people I want you guys to realize that listening, in MK9, a large part of the Mortal Kombat community was other communities. Much like Deadly Alliance, where much like Deadly Alliance, where the majority of the FGC, not Mortal Kombat per se, made up its tournaments. Then we have so many tournaments would have, like in the early days, would have PR Rog, Li Joe, Justin Wong, Flo, Alex Valle, Jop, Chris G, a lot of like other community. I was at the first CEO. Tokido was playing in the pool.
Yeah, he was playing
Tokido,
Noob Saibot, which was
Noob
pretty cool.
Saibot, right? So you had so many people from other communities that started out with like MK9. MK9 was kind of like a rebirth. And then the MK community came into its own. Then you had kind of like 1 to 2. Then you had X. It was like, okay, we can get behind this. And then 11 was like, what? And then 1 was like, I don't know what's happening. I think if you look at the 3D games, the 3D games are one of the biggest gripes people have about modern Mortal Kombat is lack of online features. It's kind of bare bones. And Dave has also argued for this, like, hey, no matter who says what about MK1, even when they try to praise it, Dave will never let them stand for no lobbies. It took so long to have crossplay. Some of like things that are basic features in other fighting games are not even in MK1. But if you look at what's considered peak content, people look at deception and things like that, whether it's puzzle combat and chess combat or conquest mode or the overall feel or the music or the stages or whatever. But when you are porting over so much from one game to the next, and Deception is not identical to Deadly Alliance, and Deadly Alliance and Deception is not, they are not identical to Armageddon. But when you port over so much, you can still tweak how the game is played. Look, they added breakers to Deception. They kind of toned down how the sidestepping and toned up some of the branches. Introduced throws that were now unblockable, which was its own can of worms.
Traps.
Yeah, death traps. And then you had Armageddon, which had parries.
Air combat.
So many things that they were able to add, and they were able to give you more content. They didn't learn from that. I truly believe if they had gone a similar route in the NRS era, some things that are common, like if you're from another community, and you get into MK1, for example, and you're playing in Combat League, think of how dumb it is. You get your first character to Elder God. Well, now I want to try a new character. How do I start from scratch? Create a new PSN. So let's say there are 30 characters. Maybe there's more than 30. I don't know. I don't remember. I haven't counted them in a while. You would have to create 30 PSNs to rank each character up to Elder God individually. That's what the fuck is that? But Street Fighter, you don't have to do that. You have individual character rankings. Tekken has individual character rankings. There's so many different things that I think we would have if they didn't have to spend so much development time, you know. And some of this is on Warner Brothers, but part of what Warner Brothers is resources. And when Warner Brothers has to donate, when Warner Brothers says, we all know how they are, we saw it digital eclipse, they're like, hey, we want to spend this much, not a penny more, and maximize our profit. We're looking to spend as little as possible to make a game playable so we can make money. But when you do that, it's like, okay, well, since we're doing a whole bunch of new shit like cameos or like custom variations, a lot of those resources have to go to that dev time, and you don't really have much dev time for things like getting crossplay playable at day one, which MK11's crossplay is still in beta. You know, that's the joke. Combat League, I remember Dave waited a couple of months, took off from work the first week of Combat League, and they delayed it another month. So I think, you know, it's caused its own problems, you know. So they had never learned from that lesson. And I think we've seen this in every Mortal Kombat game. The 3D ones are the only ones where they kind of use that format. But I think I would honestly say MK Armageddon is probably where the community was the most kind of like going off on its own. It was fully functioning on its own. You had clan battles and all this stuff, good game thread. It was alive. The forums were alive, things like that. And an early MK9, you know, or even late MK9 when the community really came together for the MLGs, because, you know, the Tekken community was laughing like, hey, well, if you put that kind of money up for Tekken, we'd crush MK9. And then they did, and we doubled their numbers at MLG. And then ever since then, I think the game's just, it makes it hard because what Mortal Kombat does is it gets rid of everybody old for a bunch of new people. And then the next game, let's get rid of almost everybody old for more new people. And you can't build that way. Mortal Kombat doesn't build, it just kind of restarts every single time. And I think that finally caught up with them.
Isn't that ironic with MK1's storyline? Right? But
you're not wrong.
yeah, I know, right? It's
I mean, the
literally
games are all about resetting the timeline. How funny is it that the actual community has to go through it too?
No, absolutely. But I do want to mention one thing, and that's the fact that something that Jimmy talked about, right? How Ultimate was not popular in in the early arcades.
Not at all.
Yeah, but it was made popular much later, right? By people like Shock.
Tell you what made it popular. Well, Shock had a big part in it, but also you're forgetting when the game came out on Xbox 2006, it exploded, man. A lot of people, even I got that shit on Xbox. I was like, I need to play this. That also made it explode in a way. Them releasing the game with online. Back then, that was a big deal. Like when some of the older games got released like that.
What was a huge deal?
Yeah.
I want to give Lex some. I want to give him some credit here, because what really sparked things, even when Shock was. So when Shock started out, a player that I knew from the Menlo days before, I don't even remember how Shock and Prophet met. I think they worked at the same place. I knew Prophet from, he would go, I think he played at Freehold or whatever it is, but he would go to Menlo sometimes. When he was started, he was taking Trilogy to the Northeast tournaments. But of course, it was tough to get people into them because he's playing on the PlayStation pad, which nobody liked. Everybody was a stick player in the early stages of the FGC. And then anyone that played Mortal Kombat were stick players in the arcade. They didn't want to play on the PlayStation pad. So then he started bringing his own sticks, custom sticks, and Kylara and all that stuff. You know, he started bringing a PC with custom MK sticks that he paid for. But even still, it was very small. What really exploded and started like some of the competitive juices again was Lex when he did a MK3 Compedium thread on SRK. And this is really the first time that, so back, you know, UMK3 came out in an era where knowledge was not like today. So you didn't have like threads like MK4 had MK Nightmares, and you had, you know, I was doing combo videos and guides for characters, and other people were talking about guides and releasing their combo videos. But games like UMK3, none of that shit existed. It was pre-forum era. So here we have this guy who's a tester at Midway, just info dumping, to take your word, Lex, and myself and Lex have had many conversations about this. Info dumping everything out there. And really, this was like the first time like the whole world was able to read about high-level UMK3. And then you had regions, kind of the Chicago area and the Northeast area and this region, talking about who would win in UMK3 and these I guess arguments on the forums and everything. But Lex really pumped a massive amount of life into that, and you had all this information now that was becoming available in the modern era. So I definitely want to give him his credit for that. But in the arcade era, when 3 came out, a lot of people that were into 2 were like, now it's a run button and these dial combos, and 3 really started to go down. And then, UMK3, I believe, came out 6 months after 3. And like, I think 3 came out in mid-April, April 15th. How do I forget that? And then I think end of October, early November was UMK. But it really had lost a lot of its steam at that point. And, outside of maybe the Chicago area, which is one of the reasons why they were so good, is everything was online. See, WaveNet, by the way, isn't just a specific version. It's I think they had MK3, whatever online. All the versions of MK3 were online in Chicago, which is why they were able to get so good. They were able to share information in a way that no one else in the country possibly could. But a lot of other areas that weren't able to link up arcade to arcade, they just didn't have the player base because, people from 2 to 3, it really started to die off. And then, of course, from 3 to 4, there's really nothing outside of, I'd say, Chicago, which was still going strong with WaveNet. They played the game longer than anybody else in the arcade era. They had the most experience of anyone else in the arcade era. But everywhere else, like Jimmy said, 3 was like, it wasn't it for a lot of people.
Yeah, I remember James was mentioning that a lot of people felt something was lazy. Like you go from having to create and put together your own combos, like in MK2, whereas in MK3 you just have to do an auto combo string that's like, canned, and then you get damage out of that. It was just kind of a turnoff, I guess.
Yeah.
The way he put it.
And by the way, I think the people I would love, and I hopefully you can reach out to him. The people there's so many things that Lex told me that obviously I don't want to. It's his story to tell, and there's so much information. Like a lot of the stories that I or Rio or somebody can share about the NRS era and and like how the experience was and things in NRS and the testing and the early stories of the game. This guy has that history of the Midway era, which is invaluable. And I would love for him to come on and tell his story. Obviously, like I said, it's not my story to tell, but there's just so much history. That if Lex, ever has the time to come on and tell, like it would be, people would be fascinated by it.
I agree 100%. I've been talking to Lex and I'm trying to work something out. He doesn't want to come on, so we're trying to like plan that on. I'm not sure if it's going to be this month or next month, but it's definitely in the works. And I'm glad that you and Lex are cool now. And, like all that drama and stuff got, pushed aside and buried, because I think when we have a lot of players that are more open about things to each other and more they understand like, hey, this player came from here, this player's from here. It's better that way, because then we get to understand a lot of players' histories, which is great for everyone moving forward.
I think
I agree.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. And ultimately, like, look, we have criticized these games for 20, 25 years. But at some point, I think the community has to step up and be like, look, this game is worth playing. Justin Wong and Yabs did that with Marvel. Daigo has done it for many years with Street Fighter. No matter what the meta is, right? Shock, Lex, and many other people who deserve to be mentioned did that with Ultimate, right? And Jimmy did it with MQ2. And we also have to give Crimson credit. Like, I think he exaggerates to the extent that the community, makes a difference. But, like, he's kind of right. Like, Melee did it with their game. In spite of, being called a party game, a not fighting game, and people like me trolling it for many, many years, they did it. When is our turn?
I mean, a lot of people also respect Melee, because even though in the beginning that was happening, they were playing items on stuff, once people started trying the games and playing them, they were like, oh, shit, yeah, this is not a party game. The game's actually hard to play, and there's a lot of stuff behind it.
But the point I'm trying to make is, like, again, in spite of the game's flaws, lack of balance, glitches, and all that stuff,
no
right?
Online
Obviously,
for Melee, like...
Exactly, yeah, like... And we all know, like, I'm not saying, Melee is the same thing as Deception, right? Of course I'm not, right? But, at some point,
no.
Yeah, we have to be like, you know what? This game has flaws, but it's worth playing, and let's get people to play
Dude,
it.
if you
Well,
And
the
think
that's
problem
deception is
is,
bad online, oh my god! I remember I was playing it offline one time. I was like, this game is a
yeah,
hundred times worse offline. There's no
yeah,
moves you can do. Online, what's crazy is if you play deception offline, it feels so much better online because you're like, oh, I have all these moves I can do this and that. But yeah, offline deception is sadly
yeah,
not in a playable state.
it's weird. Also, what the MK community has a habit of doing, they've done the whole NRS era, man, is the term necro, which is so stupid to me, where people always say, if you don't like this game, go back and play the game you want to play. But then when they do, if that game ever gets any traction, the current community will be like, well, hold up, dog. How dare you bring life back to an old game, even though we told you to do that? Necro, you ain't shit, bitch. I mean, that's what they do. If you did it in 9, you're a Necro, you ain't shit. During Injustice 2, well, you don't like Injustice 2, why don't you play Mortal Kombat, bitch? So it was like, okay, we will. So a lot of people started playing MKX. Ninja Killer comes around. We were doing podcasts. Ain't he that Necro? Where was he? This is what they do. And they will crap on everybody doing exactly what they're doing because it's like, well, I wanted you to play as long as nobody else was playing. No fair, because Crimson will say, do what Smash does. But the one time we did that was during MKX, where Injustice 2 was out. A lot of people didn't get behind it. So MKX kind of got this weird movement going again. And Destroyer was hosting it. Destroyer was huge in MKX, like getting kind of revitalized, was doing it constantly, was doing tournaments, was doing, Scar would come back sometimes. Ninja Killer was winning a lot. You saw Sikander a lot. That's where I first saw Sikander. Tweety would come back some weeks, Unbearable Skill. And the current community was like, hold up, dog. When we said go back to Mortal Kombat, we didn't mean go back to it and give it some life. Now that you gave it get fucked, Necro. You only playing because you can't win in this game. The thing the community did was completely crap on everybody
Yeah,
that
all
did
that
it.
arguing and stuff was tough. I remember that though. After the first 6 months of Injustice 2, a lot of people went back to MKX and they just started playing it as their main game until MK11 because people
Yeah,
just
but the
did
problem is the
not.
people that played Injustice 2 were like, hold up.
Yeah, they started calling
There's
them
so many
necros. It was just a dumb term. Necro meaning like like you're back from the
playing the old
dead.
game.
Yeah, like you're
But
back from the dead.
they'll tell you if you don't like this, play what you like. Don't complain about the current game. So then people stopped complaining about the current game, went back to the previous NRS game, and then the people on the current MK game started complaining about the people bringing life to the old MK
Yeah,
game.
this is why sometimes MK's biggest enemy is MK players themselves.
Of
Because they'll
course it
be
is.
there to tell everybody, hey man, don't play MK9, his game is trash, or don't play MK3's game is trash, or don't play whatever MK game it is, it's bad. Don't play, it's terrible. And then that gets other people to rally up behind them, be like, yeah, that game is shit, don't play it. And then people end up not playing a lot of Mortal Kombat because everybody's just saying their own game is shit and nobody wants to play anything.
I think what they do is a lot of times is what happens is it's a big who plays your game. Oh, this game is out. Nobody plays your game. Nobody plays your game. And then we came all the way to MK1, and now everybody's saying to MK1, now nobody plays any game. We got to the point where there's no next MK, probably not for the foreseeable future while all this is getting sorted out. And now it's no longer who plays your game, it's who plays Mortal Kombat in general. That's what happened, So, but we can talk about these mistakes all day long or recognize that and say, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah, and what's
if
crazy?
you're playing
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like a lot of people that play, like even for example, me, someone who's been playing MK for decades since 2004, been playing online. When I get back into MK1 next month, I mean, I'm gonna have to start from scratch basically. MK1's not like MK11 or MKX or MK9, so even for someone who's played so much Mortal Kombat, is gonna have to start from scratch because the games are so different from each other. Like I might as well. I don't even know what character I'm gonna play, to be honest. Maybe Scream, but who knows? The game is just it's gonna feel like a new experience basically.
Well, here's what I believe. I don't think there's anything wrong with people voicing their opinions as long as it's not done in a malicious manner. Like if Rio goes back to MK1, it's like, you know what, dude, I don't like this game because this and that reason. I think that's 100% justified, right? And even with Tom, I don't know. If Tom goes back to MK1, goes back to MKX, like that, those conversations need to happen. yes, some people may perceive them as toxic, but like people should be able to express how they feel. Like how's this, like how are the developers, I know they don't sometimes listen, but like how are they supposed to get feedback, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody's like, yeah, we're not like when I don't mind. Look, I think there's a difference between, and I think this is a very nuanced yet a very important argument, right? Like I can support an ultimate tournament or MK11 tournament. I actually watched some of the Dominican tournament that happened for MK11. Yet, if the conversation is about, hey, let's talk about MK11's meta, then of course people like Tom and me are going to express how we feel. Like, if we can't, like, then it's not an authentic. It's not a realistic argument, right? It's a fake argument.
But
So
let
I
me
don't
also
mind.
give you let me also
Yeah,
give you this, Dave. I don't mean to cut you off,
no,
but
it's fine.
so listen. When I made my video kind of crapping on MK1's numbers, I wasn't crapping on like the numbers of MK1. I was saying obviously it's who the streamers are because the popular Mortal Kombat streamers. So if all the Mortal Kombat, so if like Foxy one day decides to stream MK11, MK11 is going to have a lot more views than MK1, not because it's popping off, but because a massively popular streamer who commands a huge audience is on that game. Same thing with Sikander. If Sikander wants to put an MK1, MK11 one day, it's going to have more views than MK1. Much like when I was streaming Legacy Collection its first time out, and I was having 300, 350 viewers, it was crushing MK1. Not because it was popping off per se, but it's you have or when I streamed Deadly Alliance for like the first time in forever, and I had 280, and it was beating MK1 at that moment. It's not that like people were like, oh shit, MKDA, that hotness. It was popular streamers, but they weren't. The popular streamers aren't really popularly. They're not streaming MK1 anymore. Um, and the thing is, you people like Crimson says, oh, well, the community has its popular influences or whatever. We can build like Smash. Not true. When, for example, I forgot what it was. Was it Injustice 2 that was out? And Future Time, Future Time was doing MK. What was it? The Ultimate MK1,
Yeah, TE.
MK9, and we were like TE or whatever. We were playing it, and I was trying to play some online. My stream, I got like 1,000, 700, 800 people like Tom
Yeah, there were
living
a
in
lot
the
of people watching.
past. Yeah, but they were like, but you're living in the past, living in the past. Canada, I don't know. Poor Tom, those mental issues, man. He just can't get out of the past. And then during MK11, when I would put on like MKX, and because Maximilian did the MKX Twitch thing, so I started streaming MKX again, and it was getting a good amount of people watching. It's like, oh, Tom living, I'm playing Diddle, and Diddle's like, Tom, can't compete in the modern games though, living in the past. That's the problem. You're just stuck in the past. And like, this is what the community does. So even when like certain major influencers try to do it, so it doesn't matter if the community builds up its own scene in an old game, you're a necro and it's frowned upon. If certain influencers try to start streaming an older game and bring some interest to it to try to help, the fragmentation of the community, oh, they have mental problems. They're stuck living in the past. They just can't evolve. They're like the dinosaur. If the MK community is the biggest group of assholes to each other, and now, for the first time, we're more friendly because we're all like in the same boat. We're like, fuck. Now nobody plays any of our games. But we never laid that foundation. So now we're like, well, what do we do? And I think better late than never, it's time to kind of lay that foundation now. We can't do this shit to each other anymore.
Yeah, so there's an interesting question I was asked by First Datum. He said, question, but as far as like, as we feel, would you guys say the last real MK game, like what was your personal opinion? He feels it's MKX, but what would you guys say was the last real Mortal Kombat game that was like worth playing in your opinion?
Dave, you want to go first?
I like MK1. I mean, I have my armor. I think the couple characters that I use have good zoning. I wish there were more of them. I think zoning from what it used to be an MK9 did need to be adjusted to be more interactive. Not necessarily with Freddy, but maybe with Cabal, to a lesser extent with Kenshi. I'm having fun. Is it the perfect game? Of course not. The game has a lot of flaws, and I criticize it on a daily basis. But I had rather play that than MK11, which I Rio, I try to go back.
Well, I mean,
I
your
try
only
to
other
keep,
option is MK11, to be honest.
yeah,
So then
exactly.
that is
I
your
don't
only
like
other option.
speaking of MKX. I highly dislike the last batch. I think
Mhm.
I mean,
I
even if you went
honestly,
to back to MKX, Dave, how are you going to play if there's no combo league? Again, you have to go to rooms and hope there's
well,
people.
I actually have people,
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
King
you could play
Junior.
offline with Franco and play
Yeah,
and win, and then
guys, I'm not kidding you. When we played that game, I forgot how we did it. We took out the hard drive and we played the game when he had armor. Like, I know it's hard to believe. That's essentially what we did.
bro, you guys weren't even playing the
Uh,
last version of MKX. That's crazy.
I told you
That is.
I don't mess around. I don't like the last. I'm at a point where I think I had rather play MK11. At least in MK11, I know I can pick Setron, actually try to zone people, maybe use Jade, and I can have a little bit of fun. But yeah, an MK9 I like I think it was a good game for its time. I think it's just aged horrendously, and it's very, very difficult to enjoy at like a high level, very, very high level. Not necessarily like a mid or low level, right? Just when you play at a high level, you already know what the game is. Maria, what do you think?
I mean, to be fair, I did enjoy playing MK11. MKX, I didn't play much of the final patch. I was already like mentally checked out at that point. So I mean, if I did go back to MKX, it would feel kind of interesting to me because I didn't get to explore the final patch as much. I just remember when they nerfed Hunter Predator, didn't give Aaron Black much of anything, and some other characters. I was like, what is this? It was like they're buffing characters that are already good, like Katana and this and that, but then characters that needed it get nerfed, like Predator, and then they're buffing Liu Kang. Like, I don't know. To me, the last patch kind of made no sense with the characters that were getting nerfed and buffed, but some of them obviously deserved it, like Alien and Kano and whatever. But I mean, if MKX had a good ranked mode, and yes, I probably would play that. I don't mind playing MK11 next month, but I guess I'm going to start with MK1 because I haven't played it since the first 2 months, so it would feel like a new game to me. I just don't know what character I would start with. I guess I'm just going to have to character explore until I find a character I want to use.
The last real MK to me, that's tough.
Deception.
I mean, that you
9 or X.
enjoyed grinding. Like
Oh,
basically,
a
what is the
9.
game you want to grind or play in? I guess next year, in next month, January, when it
Oh,
comes.
I
And
would
what's
I would
going to
play
be?
9 or Deadly Alliance. 9 was fun for me because I felt that there was even more creativity than X. X was just like, how can I put somebody in my 50-50? And there's only so many ways to do that. Um 9, through all its faults, 9 was so detailed in how you had to tackle every individual situation. Like, I think about an MK11. Like, I used to have this talk with myself, and I would say, "Man, what is wrong with me? How did I play all these NRS games, or even 9, where like Sub-Zero had all these bad matchups, and I had to figure all this shit out? Now I'm playing 11, and he doesn't have any bad matchups. He doesn't figure anything out." And I'm like, because I'm bored. You play someone, you lose. What are you gonna do? Well, I guess I got to mix with him better next time. Like in 9, there was so much knowledge. There was, in a way, there was less restriction, which you could argue is some of the reason why you had some of the balance issues. But what the less restriction gave you is so much creativity to where you can figure more stuff out and find another way to do something one way or another. I, I believe that there's a way to have that kind of creativity without kind of the obnoxiousness of MK9. NRS just never figured it out. Um, I would say 9, and before 9, definitely Deadly Alliance. Deadly Alliance was, again, extremely fun because it was surprisingly complex for. Mortal Kombat games used to be very universal. Everyone has the same normals, etc. And I thought those games weren't complex. UMK3, I think, has a level of complexity that most of them give it credit for. But it was surprisingly complex. I didn't expect it. And it just played like a real 3D game, you know. Uh, so those two games are the ones that I had the most fun grinding because of the creativity and overall freestyle feel and skill ceiling. And I don't mean to seem like MK9 is the most skilled game ever, But the less you have, like 50-50. Now, obviously, it has things like hit somebody once with Cyrex. But let me give you an example. We had a very
Or
popular
YOLO
player.
armor into full combo.
Yeah,
one
we had a
bar.
very skilled player. Was a Doomsday player in Injustice 1. Now, he was a very good Cyrex in MK9. He only had to hit you one time. His problem, though, how does he get to point A to point B without getting hit in the face? Now, when you gave him Doomsday, problem solved. Point A to point B,
Yeah, he was
right?
ridiculous. He was also
Armored,
really good in deception with Noob Smoke.
very good, right? But my point is that the more you don't have full screen move that has armor, bulldozes everything, and plus whatever on block, or throw out full screen move in the cameo, plus this on block, hold my mix some more, hard to block, or 50-50, 50-50, 50-50, the more you stray away from that stuff, the higher the skill ceiling is. I'm not saying there's not dumb stuff in there, like smoke with everything, Cyrex, etc. But I do think there was and even Rewind feels like it has a higher skill ceiling just because you don't have things like 50-50s, which are
Yeah, I
kind
heard
of a way to bridge the gap.
Rewind's a player. I mean, Dave, you're familiar with him. He's top in MKX, Injustice, MK,
Yeah, of course.
MK1. Like, probably one of the best all-time NRS players. He's been playing a lot of MK9 lately, grinding it with Soup, and he's been enjoying the game so much. He thinks it's very fun. So maybe, I don't know, is MK9 this nostalgic game that was never good and people only liked it back then because there was nothing to play? Or is it maybe, there was a little magic there and maybe it's better than people think and it should have been building from there and expanding on it instead of
Both. And
before
Dave goes, I know Dave's going to talk about this. Both. Here's why. Let me just say this before I want Dave to chime in on this because Dave has always had an excellent talking point. Because a lot of these people that are going to be saying, yeah, MK9, like when I say this, they're going to say, yeah, MK9. And then Dave's going to say, but if you had to fight it, you wouldn't be saying
lands that jump in.
Not even that. Like Freddy's zoning, for example.
Remember when we would look at Christie's face every time we fight Sarx and he'd land and
yeah.
jump and he'd look at us and be like, put his hand up and be like, yo, so what is this? He touched me once.
So, for example, you have like what ended up like the Deadshot. I think Deadshot is the biggest prototype for what people don't want.
One of the most
have like a wrist shot
ever created,
right?
50-50s nonstop.
Exactly. People look at like NRS zoning as if it's just spamming one light speed projectile over and over and over.
There's no skill to input either. It's a easiest input.
Yeah. So, but if you look at Freddy, for example, Freddy had to use all of his zoning moves collectively. And the reason why, like people are like, even today, the reason why there wasn't so many, people weren't stupid back in 2011, if it was as brain dead as something today, you'd have a million of them. But it wasn't. You had to use everything in conjunction. So you had to use his straight claw with his ground claw, with his spike, which had 3 different versions. Or was it 4, Dave? I don't remember. And then you had his EX Hell spike. You had to know when to do all this stuff. So to get Freddy's zoning to work, it was a combination of 4 different projectile attacks. And you had to use them properly in conjunction with one another. And it was about making reads when they're going to move, when they're not going to move, when, whatever. And it wasn't as easy as people think it was. Cabal, same thing. People look at Cabal. Cabal, you look at this, the zoning. If you just tried to win with instant air gas blast, you would get absolutely trashed at high level. We had a guy who thought that was all it was, and he got beat by Shiva.
Let me say something Cabal real quick, dude. I don't know why people are so obsessed. Even when, like, during MK9 when it was like the newest game out, people are so obsessed with, oh my god, the zoning's broken, it's strong. That's not even the most broken thing about Cabal. The thing that makes Cabal so good is the fact that he has this ridiculous armor move. He has the best rushdown in the game, and the combination of him having some of his zoning, his Soul Blade, and his spin in neutrals what makes him good. So it's literally his offense, his armor. That's what makes him dumb, not just his fireball zoning, which for some reason people swear by him. That's why the character's broke.
But you had to use so many things to make Cabal work. It wasn't just the rushdown or the zoning. It was such a it was the decisions you made. So Cabal had his instant air gas blast. but you also had to know like when to zone, when to transition from zoning into what I like to call the Rio, where you'll threaten with parry or flash parry and come in and stop and pressure, or you'll pull the trigger just to keep them, respectful as they're trying to be too aggressive coming in. When they use
Yeah, I just
fireball,
want people
when
to
they
know the
use
most broken thing about him was definitely his armor and his spin move. Those are the two things that made him over
yeah,
the
of course.
top.
But you had to
Not his
use
fireballs that people
when to
keep talking
zone,
about.
when to pressure into poke, when to pressure into more zoning, when to pressure into pressure, when to pressure into overhead or low saw, when to projectile and then come in, when to know when to pull the trigger on that. Multiple things. Now, when I say this, we have a lot of people who will say, yeah, that sounds like blah, blah, blah. But then to Dave's point, and I know Dave's going to make it and he's not wrong, if you had to fight that, none of these people that say that would be like, you know what this makes me want to do? It makes me want to go in the lab right now and learn how to fight this stuff. They would say, no, get this shit out. And I know, Dave, that's where you're going to go, and you're right.
Yeah, and before Dave
Well,
goes real quick, you do have to really like the game to want to grind matchups like that.
Well, that's the problem, and I think the question you guys have asked is like, why can this community not grow? Well, here's why. From a competitive perspective, right? Not from a casual perspective. When you have an icon that Tom wants, when you want zoning and defense that I want, and when maybe you want the type of execution, the type of intricate, subtlety that Rio wants, there's a chance you're gonna have a lot of bad matchups, right? By design. Maybe not as bad as what MK9 and what Marvel, or, what Super Turbo has, but you will have bad matchups. And in this day and age, as Tom just told you, people don't want to deal with that. They want to have they will watch it. Like they will like people like how MKX was super fun to watch, and then like, okay, go play against it. Like, no, this game is trash. I don't want to deal with this fucking Quan Chi garbage. Like, it's unbearable, right? Like, that's the problem, right? So how do you please everybody? How do you please the viewers? How do you please the high level players? How do you please the mid level players? How do you please you cannot, right? It's impossible. And that's why we're stuck in this dilemma. That's why we're stuck in this.
You know what we need? Wake up neutral jump punch back from MKX. That'll bring everybody
Oh my
back.
gosh.
No, I'm joking.
And
Bro,
by the way,
dude, I used to die laughing when I was watching tournaments and some player would wake up neutral jump punch and launch the other opponent and they'd be like, what the? They'd be so flabbergasted.
that's the Forever King special. That's
dude,
Forever
that
King.
used to make me die because it was the most idiotic, dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life that it was so funny that it was in the game. Because every time someone got hit by that, it felt like they were about to have a heart attack of what kind of disgusting shit.
People like Forever King, was my friend.
Forever King Quan Chi and MKX
You
wake
love
up neutral jump.
No, but people have no idea how bad it was in the beginning. They nerfed wake up neutral jump punch like 4 times. This shit was obnoxious in the beginning. You could never approach someone on knockdown because they can instant 4-frame launch you off the ground.
Yeah, let me say this real quick. People like Forever King, they loved pre-patch Quan Chi. Why? Because it was essentially like nobody was going to defend against that stuff in the pools ever at any point in their lives ever, even in the in the afterlife. They're still going to get hit by those.
Dude, I'm so guilty of that though. As much as I didn't like MKX during the game, I used to be the first one that people stream watching people play that shit because that was entertainment. I used to be at Destroyer stream. Other people, I was like, I want to see people play this game and get hit by some dumb shit.
I had played to and walk out of my apartment. Master D, who never gets salty, like, dude, pre-patch tremor armor +10. I was like, what is this game? What am I playing?
I remember when Christy's first experience at, what was that tournament? Defend the North. When he was playing against Denzel in casual, and he would block this armor move that Christy knew in his head was dumb, devastating. Okay, it's my turn to move. And then Denzel would smack him 4-1-2, and Christy would be like, look at me behind, like, with his hand up. I'm like, oh my god, here we go again.
You were like, we didn't do this.
I'm like, wait, he's like, yo, what the fuck? Why can't I punish that? I'm like, oh, you don't know? That's plus. Christy's like, what? But we were there telling them this is stupid. I'm like, wait, yeah, we know, dude. But they decided to have armor launchers when we left.
Yeah,
that were plus.
Dude, like, but today's point to our audience, what Dave is referencing as far as bad matchups is the triangle system. You have multiple phases of offense, defense, and grappling. Like, it isn't just as simple as offense and defense. Offense has multiple forms. You have pressure characters. You have high flyers. You have 50-50 characters, like things like that. Defensive characters, you have zoners. Trapping can be a form of a defensive or an offensive trapper. You have lame out characters that are just kind of tough to approach.
With footsies.
Yeah, like lame out, like good footsie characters, but they're more defensive. They back up, they lame out a lot. And the thing that Dave always points out is they do multiple things at once. So a zoner doesn't just zone. A zoner can zone and do something else. A trapper doesn't just trap. They can maybe trap and lame out. It's not like limited to like kind of like one thing. And you have different forms of grapplers, right? And no one archetype defeats them all. That's why it's a triangle. It's a rock, paper, scissors system. So, for example, you might have a pressure character, a pressure footsies character that plays very grounded, and he's going up a zoner, or even like a mixed character. And of course, they'll be good up close, but it's tough to get in on that zoner. But then you'll have another form of offense, a high flyer. High flyers are traditionally very, very good against zoners. So you have the zoner, which will beat the one offensive character, and here's the high flying character, which might beat the zoner. Also, counter zoning is a form of defense. And then we have the grappler. The grappler will struggle against the zoner, but then we have this high flying character who's all over the place. But the problem with the high flying character, as we saw with Jackie versus Kodal in MK11, eventually it is the grappler's turn. So what happens is when you bring yourself to a grappler, you're like, okay, now it is finally his turn, but I don't want to surrender because he might command throw me with a mid unbreakable command throw. I'm going to hit a button. Then you get smacked in the face for devastating damage. So you say, I think I'll mash, and now it's his turn. I'll finally block because I don't want to get smacked. Then he's like, yeah, stay blocking. Command throw, command throw, command throw, and you're like, all right, I gotta hit a button. You hit a button, damn, you hit a button now. GG's, dog. It's over. Because you're bringing yourself to a grappler. So you're gonna have bad matchups in this situation because you're gonna have one version of an archetype maybe might go even here, or then the other version might go even there, or one version might win 6-4, or one version might win 7-3. So some matchups will be close, some will be slight advantage one way or another, some will be lopsided. And that is what happens when you put that much in a game. But to Dave's point, the modern player doesn't want to deal with that. If they say they want that, but then when they're not willing to deal with the consequence of that. So it's like it's good to say until you have to fight it, and then it's not okay anymore.
Yeah, you just unlocked the memory. Remember when we were playing MK11, and for that like almost a year period, everybody in the mom was complaining about grapplers, going like, they need to be removed. These characters can't have these make command grabs. It's too dumb, too dumb. That was so obnoxious. Like people not understanding some characters should have a different kind of playstyle that you may not like. That was going on for so long, and then MK1 comes out, and one thing I noticed is you go through the cast, I'm like, what did they do to all the grapplers? There's only like Reiko and Shao Kahn, that's it in the beginning. And I'm like, wow, they really took the feedback people were giving in MK11 to a whole new level when the game comes out and there's barely any grappler characters.
But ironically, right now the grapplers, those characters are some of the best in the game.
Well, yeah, they probably
Because-
didn't you say they made a lot of DLC characters grapplers? They brought them back because they realized removing them in MK11 when people were bitching about them was stupid as hell because every character should have characters that are grapplers.
Reiko stars got nerfed, but they buffed the hell out of his command throw. They added Homelander, he's a grappler. Cyrax, obviously,
isn't Ghostface a grappler too?
Yes, another like 50 Vortex characters. So, but yeah, that's my personal problem with these games. I don't mind the gameplay style. It's just that when you add stuff like that in the game, I think you have to have to some extent. To Tom's point, to some extent, you have to have some kind of defensive options. I know in NRS game happens
your defensive
to be
option against a grappler is to jump, like the thing that a lot of people do anyway.
Well, sometimes it's just like zoning, like other defensive
unless it's Jason
options,
Voorhees, where you go to jump his command grab, he's like, "Oh, I recovered in time. Let me answer," and it's like, "What?"
Well, anyway, I think the point is like they like to watch these matches, unfold, yet they don't necessarily like to play those matchups because they're the first ones to complain. And by the way, I did it myself in MK9, right, with Smoke and to a lesser extent Cyrax, etc., right? So all I'm saying is, I know, on the basic surfaces, these topics sound simple, but they're not. Like, and again, I think the question that we've been kind of asking this whole podcast is like, how do you get people together? How do you get people to unite for one game? How do you assemble everybody? And that's why this question has no answer, because it just kind of depends, right? I don't think our community is big enough to have support for a game like Super Turbo and Third Strike, which are as different night and day. And by the way, Marvel as well, right? Uh, we don't have a community like that. We just don't.
No, we don't.
And I think we have to deal with the consequences. And maybe by the time I'm 60 and God forbid Tom is lying on his deathbed and Rio's also 55, then maybe we will have that one point and I'll be like, you know what? I'm
Maybe.
I'm retired and I get to watch the younger guys compete, and I don't know, in an 8,000 man EVO tournament. But
Yeah, so
obviously nowhere near that.
I guess we could close out with this final question I have. What would be your ideal next Mortal Kombat game? What are all the things you want to return and see? What are the things you do not want to come back, like at all?
I mean, it's a complicated conversation. I don't want to go too long just to be respectful of Tom's time and mine as well, because I'm trying to wrap it up here soon. It's difficult to say. Uh, I want to focus on I want to extend interactions. You know, I don't want to see stuff like it's too much zoning or like too much vortex, like Cyrax or Ghostface. I think maybe have somewhere in the middle. But at the same time, I do want to see like faster movement. I think that's the way to go because when you have faster movement, you can probably have better zoning and you can have better defense. I don't know if run button is the answer. I would probably go honestly. I trash MK9 for its lack of balance, for its glitches, you know, for some of its, um, lopsided matchup, et cetera, et cetera. Right? I don't have to go into that. I like to use that as a like. How many times have you and I argued about anti? I don't mind the MK9 anti-airs. I think that's ideal. We can have that back, right? That's okay.
Wait, you said you don't want
We,
run back. What if they did the KI route where the movement depends on the character you're playing? Some characters will have run, some characters will have dashing, some characters will have Street Fighter where they just do normal dash, some characters will have MK9 block dashing, some characters won't have any kind of dash, they just walk. Like, what if they did that where it's so extreme depending on what
I,
character you're playing and their movement's completely different? Or is that
I
too
wouldn't
too
mind it.
much?
I wouldn't mind it. But honestly, like it's MK again. Let's be serious. The NRS, and previously the midway team is not known for its like um, abundance
Mhm.
of depth. Let's just put it nicely like that, right? I wouldn't mind just bring back the MK9 dash system. I think it's a good balance between the run button and and having crappy movement, right? Like let's have that. It was interesting to do. Like it was kind of like awkward, honestly. Like looking back at it, like you do a knee expect with Freddy, now you have to like dash and block, and then you get to come. It's kind of weird, but I think that
There's a
adds
lot,
depth.
some combos you couldn't do unless you did block dashing
Yeah,
perfectly into them.
Mhm.
yeah. So
Like I
you
remember
add
there
like
was that
depth.
one combo Tom was doing with Sub-Zero that was very hard to do if you didn't do a perfectly executed block dash into back 1-2. It was two two
Yeah.
four EX Ice Beam, then you have to do a double block dash executed perfectly, and then you have to do back 1-2 out of the second block dash perfectly, but back 1-2 won't work. If you did it correctly, you got like what was it, 40% for one bar?
Yeah, 45, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was worth it.
I like execution. I like the depth. So like to sum it up, because I don't want to go for too long. I think kind of Rio, with all due respect, you kind of asked a very complicated question, but like make the movement better, bring back the old anti-airs, uh, the wake up system. I think it's okay in MK1, but increase the.
Hold on, I hate delay wake up. If it's not like MK9 delay wake up, I think it needs to be removed.
Well, hold on a second, please. Like increase the active frames on normals. I think that's gonna fix a lot of stuff. Like essentially, in MK1 and MK11, you were asked to do just frames on somebody's wake up, right? Because the active frames were like 1 or 2 frames on a special, on a regular move. That's
Mhm.
insanity. That's the reason why you're getting bodied on wake up sometimes. And by the way, now more than ever, here's one thing for you. If I'm not mistaken, in MK1, they just buff up the uppercuts, but for all the wrong reasons. Because now when you uppercut somebody and you cancel, there's less scaling. Like I literally fought like Combat League earlier, and I'm like, why are people mashing uppercuts randomly?
Wait a
That's
minute.
because
So this current patch you're talking about just came out. They buffed uppercuts
yes, they
to be
did,
better
but not
anti-airs or just to do more damage.
no to do fucking more damage. So what they're doing in randomly in the neutral, randomly on wake up, just randomly everything. They're just randomly doing uppercut when they have 2 bars. Because when you have 2 bars, you can do uppercut and cancel into
And they're getting like
aerial.
50, 60.
Yeah, exactly.
applicable.
So basically,
Yeah.
it's like MK11 Crusher Blow uppercuts, but instead of you having to deal with
Yes.
getting hit by one per entire match, now you have whenever they have two bars, they're randomly like down two, down two. If
Yeah,
it hits
you
you,
have.
you lose Unbreakable 60. Dude,
Yes, yes. I
why?
fought
How is
this
that better for the
katana
game?
player. I don't think it is, but I fought this katana player. I was like, why is this person mashing? And then I realized, oh my god! I looked at the patch notes. So, but anyway, it would avoid those type of circumstances. Again, just
I
to
can't
wrap
wait
it
to
up.
play Ghostface and do that. No, I'm joking.
So honestly, make the movement better. Give us back traditional anti-airs. Try to go back as much, as feasibly as possible to like the archetype system. You know, solid zoning, not as good as back in the day. Let's kind of stay away from that, but make the zoning characters like more interesting. Defense becomes more like Geras and less like bullshit like wrist shot. That's how I would design the game. Uh, you know, from my perspective.
I would like to see a counter hit system explored in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
I
great
think
point.
that there are some moves. One way to make moves that are kind of worthless good is like some moves that are worthless is like, well, if this was a launcher, it'd be stupid, right? So you can't always make it a launcher, but you can mess with like counter hit mechanics. So certain things that like are not good, you know. Let me give an example. So let's say like Sub Zero forward 1, 2, 3 still has an armor gap in it. Right now, it's whatever, right? Nobody really cares if you mash on the last hit, right? You're not going to die for mashing on the last hit. But what if on like a counter hit, it gave you a low pop up, then you could do like 2-1, like EX Polar Palm, freeze your airborne, and do a combo off of it, or whatever character, right? Something like that, right? It would change everything. Um, so then all of a sudden, like a little counter kit mechanic could do something. You could have a 2-hit string that just like you could have like 2-hit like a double low hit. Like I'll just look at Sub-Zero's back 3-4. Like the answer isn't necessarily always to mix or like to make someone be able to do a low into a special. Like, oh, if he can do low in a special and then overhead, time to mix, you can do things like have like a 2-hit string and on a counter hit, the second hit will do X, Y, or Z, right? Um, and like take MK1. If MK1, let's say take Sub-Zero's back 3-4, I would say when it hits on counter hit back 3-4, the 4 becomes special cancelable, and then you could cancel into a slide, which would then hit, and then you could call the right cameo in and get a juggle in that situation, which then would give you some more cameo freedom, give a reason to use certain cameos, and also take a string it's okay, but rather than saying, here's what you do, make the back two faster, which they didn't do, but people would say that because Davis always made that point. Like, hey, you want to make somebody better, just make overhead better, or like say, hey, give them a single hit into like a low combo sword. That's not always the answer. The answer is not always something scrubby like, oh, just make more 50-50s. You could take certain situations and you could something like that, like a back 3-4. You could literally walk backwards in footsies. You catch somebody mashing, sticking somebody out, and then you punish with that, and then you're rewarded because it then is a counter hit. So you can give all kind of characters all kind of cool freedoms without like 50-50 tools. And I would like to see them explore that in some way, shape, or form.
Excellent, guys. You don't have no idea how. Oh my God, how important that point was. One thing you guys are sick and tired of is some idiot at MKX smashing, I don't know, Luke Kang's armor or even pre-patch. Remember, whether it was me or Denzel. I think what people want to say is like, people don't mind having top tiers as long as you have to work for it, and there's some kind of depth, attached to it. And one of the archetypes that's missing from Mortal Kombat games is a counter hit character, right? Like a Steve in Tekken, right? Like something like that. And Tom, NRS, if you're listening, now's the time to listen. If you're designing a new game, now's the time to listen. This is what you implement, not the shitty fatal, like I'm sorry, the crushing blow system, right? Like it needs to be implemented properly with some type of execution and skill and depth involved. And I think it will be tolerated by the community. People will accept it, and it can be good. Excellent point by Tom. Probably honestly, one of the best things I've seen Tom say in a while. Like, it's so accurate. It's so real. It's so good.
Yeah,
Rio, what do you think?
we really need a good counter hit system. I would love to see that happen. I mean, MK11 could have been something, but the way that they implemented it was so bad. With, oh, how's the crush blow work? Randomly YOLO shadow kick someone here, and then you get a 30% crush blow. I think that's the worst way to do it. Or get hit by a random Sub-Zero slide that you weren't expecting. Oh, now you lost 35%. It's just really. I think what they should do is just go back to the drawing board, implement an actual good crushing blow system, and make it so every move makes sense. It doesn't have to be like, oh, you got hit by this random high jab that I threw out. Now you're in a crumpled state and I get like an 80% combo. It doesn't have to be that dumb, but make it so there's some depth involved. And some moves that may not seem as good normally could see some good use in it if you know how to use it with the counter hit system in certain situations. That could be really good. But then, yeah, I think
Rio,
armor needs to also be looked at. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what do you think usually? Well, I was going to ask, what do you think? You usually have a lot of good ideas. Again, I love Tom's point. Excellent. So good. What do you think? In terms of like implementing something new or adjusting something old that can, that requires more skill, that's more nuanced than some of the quote unquote scrubby shit that we happen to have right now.
Yeah, like breakers, for example, one of the worst mechanics I've ever seen since Deception. They need to redo that entire thing. Make it require skill to actually pull off, not you just autopilot, hold forward, and block, and then if they do anything, I break. It should not be like that. It should be you have to time it perfectly. If you mistime it, you get penalized heavily. Like you either lose maybe not 3 of your bars, maybe you lose 1 of your bars, and you take extra, I don't know, something. But there needs to be skill involved in these interactions. You can't just have, how do you break? Oh, the same way you did 20 years ago in Deception. You hold forward and block, and that's it. No timing required. You just do it. That stuff, in my opinion, is not enjoyable. That needs to be reworked entirely. Same thing with armor, where you just do a move and it has armor, and that's it. That's the only difference.
Yeah,
You need to make things. You need, like, what they could do is, I guess they could take a page from Tekken's book, have every character have unique armor, but have them do certain things. Like this move only has armor against high attacks. This move only has armor against low specifically. This move only has armor for the first 5 frames. This move only has armor in the last 5 frames. This move only has armor against air. Like you got to make characters feel different and play different. Not these general mechanics where everyone's armor works the same, everybody's breaker works the same, everybody the way they up block works the same. Like you got to make sure things are different and they involve some kind of skill. You don't just do it and that's it, and then you get the reward if it hits, and if you don't, then you get punished.
Nah, bro. Plus 10 armor. That's saving to 50.
I mean, you could have plus armor. It just depends on the character. Like, let's say you're playing Goro, and Goro had no forward dashes, no running, but he had plus armor. Okay, that could work for Goro, because at least you have to work your way in, right? You're not just running in, randomly doing armor. But yeah, there's so many ideas that NRS could do for the next MK game. They just have to sit down and think about it very carefully and try to make something that would feel fun to play on both sides. And also get rid of the clunkiness, too. We don't need the games to feel slower, where you do a string, and let's say there's a 3-hit string. During these 3 hits, there's like 150 frames of animation. Like, do we really need that much? It's so overkill. It just makes the game feel clunky.
Yeah. Well, folks, let's wrap it up here. And I know you guys, we haven't done a podcast for like, 2 weeks, and we'll give you
I
a
know,
long...
because you and Tom have been like very busy, and some
Yeah,
of
with the holidays, man, it's tough.
Yeah, no, I know. And some of the days we've been trying to plan, either Dave couldn't make it or you couldn't make it. So, but it's great that we've been able to pull this one off today.
And I promise you guys, obviously, if my fellow co-hosts are down, we'll give you a 3-hour one again, maybe, at some point during the during the holidays.
Yeah,
if
well,
we're
maybe
available.
next week if you guys are available on any of the weekdays, possibly, depending.
So you will kind of work it out, because I know you guys liked, and we really appreciate you guys listening to us and, giving us the incentive, the motivation to keep doing this. But we're gonna call it quits here, because I know Tom, he has to go, and I have to go soon as well. And we gotta be
Yeah, I
respectful.
also gotta get dinner too, because I don't know if you guys have ate yet, but
yeah,
it's
I
almost 11
haven't.
PM here.
So we appreciate you guys for listening. Rio, you do the outro.
Yeah, this has been an enjoyable podcast. Thank you for those in the chat who've hung around. Thank you to the audience who's going to listen to this, and also thank you to Tom and Dave for being on this. This has been episode 55, and we'll see you guys in the next show. Stay tuned. Peace out, everybody.
Later, guys.